Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Heidi from My Reading Life, and I'm here today to film my December wrap-up for the second half of December. These are the books that I read. So, right off the bat, I will tell you that the second half of December was much more successful reading-wise than the first half of December was. And I have a pretty big stack of books here, so I'm just going to get right to it. The first book I finished in the second half of the month was a mystery novel called Sovereign by CJ Sansom. And this is the third book in the Matthew Shardlake mystery series. It's a historical mystery series that takes place during the Tudor period. And in this third installment, Matthew has been sent to meet up with the King's Progress, which is currently moving through northern England to York. And so he is sent out with his assistant to York to help deal with petitions to the king. And so there's like three main mysteries swirling around that we're trying to follow, and I don't really want to talk about any of them in detail because, I don't want to give anything away, but I will say that I really love these historical mysteries because they are so informative about the time period. So they talk a lot about what's happening with the servant class, what normal people lives are like, what kinds of struggles they have, the just day-to-day, everyday details of how they live and the challenges that they face at the time period, which is in contrast to a lot of historical books from that time period, which obviously would deal with the aristocracy or the royalty or whatever. So that's really fascinating. I will say that in this particular installment, there is a lot of poop involved. So I'm just going to leave it at that. The second book I finished in the second half of December is King Leopold's Ghost by Adam Hochschild. This is a nonfiction book that talks about King Leopold, who was a king in Belgium during the 1800s. And King Leopold had ambitions to have a colony in Africa, like some of the other great powers of the time. But Belgium is a small country, and the country itself was not interested in becoming a colonial power. But King Leopold had a lot of individual power, and he did end up gaining control himself individually, not the country, but himself individually, of the area that we now know as the Congo. And this nonfiction book details that time in history and all the atrocities that happened to the people who were living in this area that we now know of as the Congo, as King Leopold basically made a fortune off extracting natural resources, in particular rubber, from this place, and just using the native population as slave labor to do that. It's horrifying. Just when you think you can't learn anything more about the colonial time period that could surprise you, a book like this comes along and you are literally blown away by the horrible things that white Europeans did to indigenous people in the name of colonialism. King Leopold was, I think, not all there in terms of his he certainly didn't have much of a conscience, and he certainly was, as he got older, more and more not thinking clearly, I think. And so he devolves as he gets older, but he never loses his business acumen and his ability to take advantage of a situation for his own personal gain. And so he died an extremely wealthy person. It was fascinating and informative, and really rounded out some gaps in my knowledge about colonialism in Africa and how that impacted Europe at the time. I can't recommend this one highly enough. If you are interested in the history of colonial power and how we got to where we are today with the arrangement of countries in this world, this book is a necessary read. Okay, I then finished another reread. This is book number 5 in the Bridgerton series. This is To Sir Phillip with Love by Julia Quinn. This is my favorite book in the Bridgerton series. I love the love story between Eloise and Phillip, which starts out in an epistolary style with them writing letters back and forth after the death of Sir Philip's first wife, who is a distant cousin of Eloise. And through this letter writing over a period of a year, they realize that they are developing feelings for each other and perhaps would suit in marriage. And so Eloise takes off to go to Sir Philip's country house to see if they will suit, and shenanigans ensue. This is a lovely story about a broken family finding a way to come together again and being healed by love. There's witty dialogue. There are funny kid moments. It just has everything that you would want in a romance story. And I will insert here, while I'm holding up a Bridgerton book, that I did indeed watch the first season of The Bridgertons on Netflix this past week, since it released on Christmas Day, and I really enjoyed it. It is a little racy, which was embarrassing at times, but I will say that I really like what the writers are doing with the storylines. It is not exactly the same as the books, and that's okay. It is a different piece of entertainment, and I am really enjoying the choices that they're making to bring the story to life and to bring these characters to life. And I will also say that the music and the costuming and the set designs are just beautiful and amazing. Love it. So that's the Bridgertons. Next book that I finished was, and I'm just going to say that I had so many excellent reads at the end of the month of December. This book was excellent. This was been recommended to me by multiple people, but the one that tops my mind is that Sean Bookmaniac recommended this book to me after I loved Ducks Newburyport. So I just found this book to be so engrossing. The narrator, who we never learn her name, she is a 18-year-old girl in Ireland in the 80s, I think 70s or 80s, and she is narrating her own story of growing up in during the Troubles and what it's like to be a young woman who has all these expectations placed on her by her family, by her society, and she has to basically meet those expectations or be thrust outside the bounds of the community. And things start to happen when this guy that they've all nicknamed Milkman starts to show attention to her. And he's much older, like in his 40s, and he is somehow involved in the, he's on the rebel side of the trouble situation. I know rebel isn't the right word, but the dissident side. And he is, he's trouble, basically. And she is not interested in him, but he keeps showing up where she is. And that's all it takes for the community to start gossiping about her and what she's up to. And she has to deal with that in a variety of different ways. Her voice is so witty and on point, and it really, I did not live in this time period, in this place, but I could really relate to some of the things that she goes through as she tries to navigate her life to enjoy the things that she enjoys while also meeting her family's expectations, her community's expectations, and not really wanting to live her own life and be free to make choices on her own, but feeling those constraints of those around her and how that impacts how she can live her life. I thought it was excellently done. Really great window into what it's like to be a teenage girl and to feel like you have to conform to what other people expect of you. Really, really excellent book. I know people are scared of this book because of the stream of consciousness style, but I will say that I did not find it difficult at all, and I think it all has to do with whether or not you connect with the voice of the narrator in these types of novels. And I found the same thing with Ducks Newburyport. I connected so strongly with the narrator that it pulled me through even those just ridiculous passages of her making lists in her head. And I found the same thing with her. There's a very circular aspect to the plot where she's thinking, so you're getting all of her thoughts, and then she will go on for pages until she finally comes back around to the moment that she's actually living through. But because I could relate to what she was going through so much, I did not have a problem with that. So very successful for me. I then read another installment in the J.D. Robb In Death series. This is Golden in Death. This is number 50 in the series. Can you believe it? 50 books in one series. And I mean, you either are, you know what I'm talking about because you've read these, or you're like, I am never picking up a book in a series that has 50 books in it. It has more than 50 books now. But I loved it. This particular series had to do with a poison. There was a toxin. The first victim gets killed when they open a package that's delivered to their home, and the package releases a toxin that kills the individual that opens the package, but then dissipates before anybody else comes into contact with it. And the other thing that's interesting about this mystery is that it has to do with private school academia, like private high schools and private elementary schools, and the academic power struggles that are happening in those places. And I thought that was very interesting. Another good installment. I then read this slim novel translated from the Korean. This is Kim Jiyoung, born 1982, by Cho Nam-ju, and translated by, excuse me, I don't know why they don't put it on the cover, Jamie Chang. So this book has gotten a lot of attention. I guess it's really popular in Korea, and maybe even has a movie or a TV show produced from it. And in this book, we are following the story of a woman named Kim Jiyoung, and she is a mother and a wife, and she is struggling postpartum after the birth of their first child. She's really struggling with the fact that she's had to step away from her career and become a stay-at-home mom and full-time, wife and caretaker of the family. And this book really, it goes back in time to her childhood and the things that she experienced growing up as a female in her society. And, she has one older sister and one younger brother, and how the different siblings are treated in the family, especially boys versus girls, how she's treated at school being a girl, but wanting to pursue educational pursuits that are considered to be male options and not female options in her culture at the time. So much of this book, I mean, this is a voice for the Me Too generation. This is a strong novel about feminism and what women have to deal with in their lives, and how much women are expected to take on to do the unpaid work of building society, basically, of building human life from childhood all the way up through adulthood, and being a mom and a member of a family. How much more is put on women than men to do that work, which is, uncelebrated, unpaid, all that stuff. I loved this novel. I thought it was tremendous. I thought it says everything that needs to be said about women's experience in the world. All of the stuff about how she wanted an education and was not encouraged in that. The things about her mom and what we find out about her mom and what she settled for in her life. What it's like to be a young mother, and to have all of that responsibility on you, even though your husband says he's going to help out and wants to help out and has all good intentions of helping out. Is just how society is structured and what culture expects of different people in a relationship. I thought this was tremendous. Even the ending, I don't want to say anything about the ending to spoil it, but I was so angry at a certain character at the end of the story. It was well done. This is really, really great. Thank you again to David at the Poptimist for doing a giveaway of this book, which is how I get a copy of it. I don't know if I ever would have actually gotten to this book had I not won this copy, and I would have missed out on one of the best reads I had in the whole of 2020. I really recommend this book. If you're looking to read more translated fiction in 2021, please do look this one up. It is really excellent, and it's quite short, so it's not a huge time commitment, but really says a lot, I think, that needs to be said about the experience of being a woman in the world. And then finally, the last book I finished in 2020 was a graphic novel, Dragon Hoops by Luen Yang. This is a sort of a memoir of Yang's life and also a history of basketball in the United States and how minorities have become involved in the sport to the point where they're now minorities are probably the dominant group of people in the sport. This book, Luen Yang is probably best known for his Boxers and Saints graphic novels. And then after that those books came out, he was sort of at loose ends. He was teaching at a private school and sort of not knowing what he wanted to do as far as writing his next book. And the high school that he was teaching at the time was anticipating that they would be going to states for going to the state championships for basketball that year. They had two nationally ranked players on the team. They had been to the state championship, I think, 7 times previously and had never won it. They felt like this was going to be their year. And so this whole book, this quite chunky book, details the run-up of that year of this high school basketball team and their efforts to win the California State Basketball Championship. In the meantime, we're learning the history of basketball, how it was first developed and created, when African Americans first began to play, when the sport first got integrated for Black players to play with white players, and then when Chinese basketball players first came to play in the National Basketball Association in the United States as well. All of those things are woven in, as well as the author's attempt to write this as a graphic novel. There's a couple of very meta points where he addresses you, the reader, about his struggles to turn this story into a graphic novel. And, you learn about his family and his career choices and all of that kind of stuff. The high school that he's teaching at and some issues there that relate to basketball. Fantastic book. I basically read this in one day, even as chunky as it is. It is so good and so compelling. I just flew through it. I loved it. And I want to thank Vanessa at Split Reads for the recommendation for this one. She was not wrong. This is awesome. If you like to read graphic novels, if you like to read sports-related stories, if you like a feel-good, inspirational story, this does all of those things. So this was an excellent way to end my reading year with another fabulous book. So yeah, that's it. Those are all the books I read in December, the second half of December. I hope you all read some fabulous books at the end of December. I hope you are all doing well. Happy New Year, and I will talk to you later.